man. I'm splitting the difference. What do you get in the meeting, John?
They'll let us know.
Stand by.
Congresswoman Abzug, your tenant group has just won a suit to hold back rent increases in New York. What's the significance of this case?
Well, this is a case that's been pending for a while. I had originally drawn an amendment to the economic stabilization law which said that you could not exempt New York from national rent guidelines just because it has its own rent control. Despite that, the Price Commission nationally did exempt them, and they were going ahead with giving notices of increases, even though we have a court suit pending, 17 tenant groups and 6 lawyers representing them, challenging the right of the Price Commission because it has violated the intent of Congress and seeking to restrain the city from putting into effect its notices of increases from 7.5% to 13%. What happened was that the city announced that it was sending out its notices starting Monday, although we were arguing the case on Tuesday. This was in violation of an agreement that the attorneys had made in court 2 weeks ago. And so we sought a temporary restraining order of their putting out the rent authorization increases, and we secured that temporary restraining order on Tuesday of this week. There will then be a further determination by the judge as to whether the Price Commission violated the intent of the law that was amended by myself and others and became the law of this country, and require that before increases go into effect in New York, they first be subject to whether they meet rent guidelines, which is part and parcel of an anti-inflationary and economic stabilization program. There's no sense in putting a lid on wages if you're not going to examine rents and prices in terms of how many increases they can have.
What's your view on how Lindsay's administering rent controls?
Well, you see, this is a rent increase program which is part of a law that was passed prior to the Economic Stabilization Act. And they have proceeded to proceed with that law as though there is nothing else that has happened. And we've said that they cannot do that, and there's no reason for them to rush to put this into effect when we are challenging it in the courts. It would not be right, and I have been very critical of the Lindsay administration for indicating that they were sending out these notices as though they were seeking to make believe there was no challenge in the courts, as though they were seeking to influence the judge's decision not to bother to restrain them because they've already done it.
Well, that's not the only administration you've been critical of.
No,
Last
that's
Tuesday,
true.
you censured President Nixon's handling of the war. Last night, he made his peace gestures known. What's your opinion of his speech?
Well, I indicated, and I indicate very clearly, that the president's speech does not make the point. He has to take 2 simple steps to end the war. One is to set a specific date to withdraw contingent only upon the release of our prisoners and the withdrawal of our troops, and to stop the bombing. You cannot continue to bomb that country and expect an agreement. Now, this is the law as it now appears in the Military Procurement Act. What President Nixon proposed last night was a possible 6 months date after some agreement which has to yet be negotiated, which could take another year, another 2. And he also showed a shocking alliance with a non-elected dictatorial government. Namely, a simultaneous announcement with the General II government is hardly in the interests of releasing American prisoners or in the interests of the American people. It shows that there is a key ingredient in his policy, which is namely the propping up of that regime. And don't be misled by the fact that he's talking about this general resigning for a month while they try to set up some election procedure. The fact is that there is the United States Phoenix program, which is a way to maintain General II's entourage in power and a way to kill off all enemies in the NLF. And General II will not be required to release all the people who are his opponents who are now in the jails of South Vietnam.
Do you think he'll push to have us out by 72? It's politically.
I think he's giving the impression that he's pushing to do that there will then be a negative response from the other side. He will then say to the American people, I have done everything that I had to do, therefore you should vote for me. But the fact is, I think he's setting it up in the same way he has refused until now to obey the mandate of the Congress as well as the people of this country, which is to set a specific date, not some 6 months after some unknown time when an agreement is negotiated. And one of the reasons he's done that is that the prisoners of war families threatened to campaign against him in New Hampshire and other places. And I think that the American people must not be misled. Only setting a date and taking out our prisoners and our own men is the way to end the war, and no other way.
There's been some confusion in another area of whether you will or you will not endorse Shirley Chisholm.
No, that's no confusion at all. What I have said is very clear. Shirley Chisholm views her candidacy as a representation of the right of a woman and a black to run for the highest office in this land. She's going to run in a number of primaries and is going to try to secure delegate votes among women and blacks to take some power to the convention. I support that entirely. I think that her candidacy is a very serious thrust at the taboo that the American presidency is the private preserve of the white American male. I think her candidacy in the places where she will be running will be an important rallying point for women, not only for equal representation at the convention, but for the fulfillment of their program from each of the candidates and a pressure on the candidates. And I made very clear that I would support and encourage the women throughout the country where she is running to mobilize support for her in vote terms. Don't forget, we have a National Women's Political Caucus, of which I am also a leader, which is multi-partisan in character, which has Republicans in it, Democrats, and independents. Now, the caucus itself has taken a position of encouraging Shirley Chisholm's candidacy, which I, of course, support, as being reflective of the issues that the National Women's Political Caucus is concerned with rather than endorsement, and that's perhaps where the confusion has come up.
All right, so you will support Shirley Chisholm, but you're
In the
not saying
places-
that you would endorse her. You cannot endorse her.
The caucus has encouraged her candidacy. I am encouraging and supporting her and helping to organize people around her campaign for votes in the areas where she is running.
How would you suggest that women use their vote this political election? I mean, shall we vote? Should we women vote for another woman as a token vote to show our displeasure, or should we use our vote in another way?
First, let me make something clear to you. There are many things that are going to happen in the arena concerning the women's vote and women's political power. We have state caucuses in over 35 states. We are seeking equal representation as delegates to each of the conventions, Democratic and Republican. I urge women to participate as delegates. We are also seeking to run more women for political office in local, state, and congressional races. Women have to use their vote for that. Women have to use their vote to see to it that whatever candidate they support have a very strong commitment to a program of equal pay for equal work, equal rights for women, the Equal Rights Amendment, a universal child care program, and a fight not only to eliminate discrimination against women in legal, social, and political institutions, but a fight to eliminate poverty, racism, and war and militarism in our society. And that's how women should use their vote. We're going to organize the political power of women in each state. We're going to put together our blocks of power, even though women may be running on different slates for different candidates. We're going to be meeting in each state, agreeing on our thrust at the convention, and then we're going to get together all the women right prior to the convention, so women can participate in utilizing their political power in unison with others.
Fine. May we cut down, please? I'd like to change magazines because that will go.
Is this your take?
Well, this is just silent.
I understand.
This is just silent.